We're closing portals and eliminating our friends. That's right, it's Among Cultists by Godot Games. In this sinister social deduction game, two teams of players, investigators, and secret cultists compete to control the fabled university. Only the cultists know who each other are. To investigators, the identities of other players are a mystery. Over up to 10 rounds, players will attempt to expose the cultists or thwart their portal opening ritual. However, if the cultists can eliminate or assassinate the requisite number of investigators, they win the game. Setup begins with the consultation of the table on page 6 of the rules. Depending on your player count, a certain number of cards need to be assembled for various decks. We're setting up for a 6-player game today, so we have 5 investigators and 1 cultist, each of which will have their own deck. According to this chart, each investigator's deck will have 7 alive cards, 8 successes, and 1 root card, while the cultist deck will have 4 alive cards, 3 dead, 2 successes, 2 sabotages, 4 failures, and 1 root. Each will have a total of 16 cards. Gather the cards listed for each deck, starting with the root cards shuffled and placed face down. Then shuffle the remaining cards for each deck, placing them atop the roots. Note which is the cultist deck by placing a roll marker face up on that deck. Put the investigator roll markers on the other decks. Next, set up the pulse card starting deck as listed in your table, skipped in a 7-player game. Take 1 alive card from the pulse deck for each cultist and place it face down on the bottom of each cultist deck. In our case, that's just 1. Shuffle the remaining pulse cards and place 1 on the bottom of each investigator deck. Return any remaining to the box without looking at them, then flip the roll markers and place each deck and its marker into an envelope. Shuffle them and distribute 1 to each player. Players now choose 1 character card, setting it in front of themselves with the alive side up. Next, set up the game board depending on your player count. Page 9 of the rules shows you which side of the board you'll need face up. Then shuffle the room's starting cards according to the table and place 1 face down next to each room. Note the color and icons for each room. Shuffle the cards listed for the draw pile and place those face down next to the map along with the portal token. Prepare the unsafe passage deck, shuffle it, and place it face down on top of the broken window. Place the character discs alive side up on the central hallway space. Shuffle the 3 cultist tokens face down and set them on the places outside the university. Set the fisherman on the lake, place the vote token face up in the cafeteria, and put the electricity token glowing bulb up in the security room. Place book tokens in each room on each book space. Shuffle the room tokens crossed outside up and place 1 token in each room. Place the clock nearby and put the turn order indicator pointing to the 1 for the first round. Next, put a number of event tokens into the bag based on the table. Set the victory point tracker on the 0 space of the scoring track and set the final score marker 1 space to the right of the victory point value needed for victory based on player count. The player who last had a nightmare takes the first player marker, the knife, and the phase marker with the move side visible. And that's setup! Before gameplay begins, players first participate in a night phase. This is where the cultists learn who each other are and learn if any investigators are already dead. Depending on the player count, 1 leader recites the night ritual of the ancients, which provides a chance for players to close their eyes and reveal the bottom card of their deck. Cultists then open their eyes, visually see who is dead and who their partner is if anyone else has their eyes open, then close their eyes. 1 special investigator role, known as the seer, also gets a chance to learn who the cultists are at the table. Follow the instructions on page 10 for your player count. The player decks are then placed face down again. The bottom card of the deck goes face down next to a player's character card and is known as their pulse deck, and all remaining cards go into their hand. Importantly, players cannot change the order of their hand of cards. Gameplay occurs in rounds, each divided into 4 phases: movement phase, event phase, action phase and cleanup phase. During these phases, players may openly talk about the game and their suspicions, but they must follow a few golden rules. They must keep their true role a secret. They can lie or tell the truth about it, but cannot reveal. They cannot share or show cards in hands, routes, etc. And the cultists cannot reveal how many investigators have been murdered. That's a secret. Also note that characters can be alive or dead. Characters are considered alive until their death is confirmed. Dead characters still get to play as ghosts and may even start the game dead without even knowing it. I'm looking at you, Bruce Willis. First up in the movement phase. Beginning with the knife holder and continuing clockwise, all characters perform their movement. Characters have 3 movement points. Each new room or hallway requires 1 point to move through. A movement cannot end where it began. Players each have a route card, which have rounds on the left and action icons on the right. The rounds indicate during which round of the game that player may use the effect of certain rooms. They'll be able to use these in the upcoming action phase. Players do not have to go to a room with an action they can use that round. They can alternatively use a character action. Investigator characters can go anywhere, but may only access room actions if it's on their route card this round. Cultists may break this rule, taking whatever action they please. However, if they're obvious about it, they'll get caught, so be careful not to take the same action twice in a row. Additionally, ghost characters who have died don't have to use movement points during this phase. They may simply teleport to their desired spot. Both during and at the end of their movement, check to see if any characters have an encounter. This occurs when multiple living characters are in a room or hallway together. However, if the power supply is on and there are at least 3 characters in the space, no encounter occurs. To resolve the encounter, all characters involved place 1 alive or dead card from their hand face down on the pulse deck of another character in the encounter. Each character should give and receive 1 card per encounter. This card remains hidden for now. Once all movement and encounters have been resolved, play moves to the event phase. Draw 1 event token from the bag and resolve it, placing it on the current round of the clock. Events include Lightning Strike, which can kill the power in the university, No Connection, which limits audible communication, and Secret Doors Revealed, which reveals secret doors. All events and descriptions can be found on page 23 of the rules. Next, in the action phase, the phase marker is flipped gear side up and each player in turn order performs 1 action, either a room action or a character action. Again, investigators may only use room actions indicated on their route card, but cultists are allowed to cheat, though they must obviously still be in a room with that action. We'll look at the actions and their details in a sec. After all players have acted, play moves to the cleanup phase. In a 4 to 6 player game, the lone cultist may trigger the end game at the start of cleanup by revealing their identity and showing they've killed the required number of investigators. If they are correct by checking the pulse deck of all characters, they win. Otherwise, begin the cleanup phase as normal by flipping the vote token to its active side up if it isn't already, by passing the knife token and phase marker movement side up clockwise to the next player, and advance the clock by 1 hour to begin a new round. Rounds continue until victory conditions are met for either side, or at the end of round 10 when the cultists win. Okay, let's take a look at some of these actions. Character actions include check a state, where the active player shuffles the pulse deck of another character in their location and looks at it in secret. If there are only alive cards, that character is alive. The deck is returned face down. If there are 1 or more dead cards, the character must react. If they're an investigator, they must reveal that information to the table, and that character is now a ghost. Cultists can choose to tell the truth, or they can lie and conceal the state of the character. Fight a cultist in the current room by removing the cultist token from the game. Scare away the fisherman. While holding the knife token and in the hallway, the player returns the fisherman token to the lake, making the hallway accessible once again. Assassinate a character. If an investigator has the assassin role, they may reveal that role and assassinate a target character. This does not trigger a vote, and the victim does not have to reveal their role unless they're the last living cultist, in which case the investigators will immediately win. Room actions include fill the room deck, where the player may add one success, failure, or sabotage card face down to the top of the current room's deck. If this creates a 3-card deck, flip the room token to its explored side. The check a room action is now unlocked for that room for the remainder of the game. If the room token has an unsafe passage icon, shuffle the unsafe passage deck and draw and resolve 1 card before shuffling it back in. On a success, nothing happens. On a failure, 1 face-down cultist token is flipped and placed in the room shown. When cultist tokens are in a room, no room actions can be taken in that occupied room. If no face-down tokens remain, the fishman is moved to the hallway. On a sabotage, the fishman is moved into the hallway regardless of the cultist tokens. Only a living character with the knife is allowed to enter the hallway with the fishman. Check a room, where the player shuffles the room deck, then draws and resolves 1 card. On a success, 1 book from this room is added to the bookshelf on a space of the matching color. On a failure, nothing happens, and on a sabotage, 1 book of that room's color is removed from the shelf and added back to the room. The drawn card is then removed from the game. Once all the books in a room have been moved, the room is considered finished and it cannot be checked again. Once all the required books on a rack have been placed, that rack scores victory points for the investigators. Initiate a vote. This can only be used once per round by a living character standing in the cafeteria if the vote token is active. Votes are also initiated anytime a murder is revealed. After a brief discussion amongst the players, everyone closes their eyes and points to a character to be eliminated. Abstainers may choose not to point. Players then open their eyes on a count of 3. If a character has a simple majority of votes, surpassing the number of abstained votes, that character is eliminated. If they were the last living cultist, they must reveal that information. If there is no majority, nothing happens. Additionally, the knife holder gains a bonus during votes. Either they may change their vote after opening their eyes, or in a 7 or 8 player game, their vote counts twice. After the vote token is flipped to its inactive side. If the cultists are eliminated, they get 1 chance to guess the seer. If they're right, they win despite being dead. Use the camera. This action can be used in the security room if the power supply is on. It allows the player to check 1 explored room or the state of 1 living character. Restart the power supply. This flips the electricity token to its glowing side, altering encounter rules and enabling the camera. Close the portal. This one-time action can only be taken by 2 characters in the green room, consuming both of their actions. The portal is then removed, and the investigators need 1 less victory point to win. However, this must be done within 3 rounds after its opening, or 2 in a 7 or 8 player game. If it isn't closed in time, then the VP requirement is raised by 1. Let's talk victory conditions. The investigators win the game as soon as they achieve their victory point goal by collecting books, or if they eliminate the last cultist. The cultists win if they can prevent the investigators from reaching their VP goal at the end of round 10, or if they eliminate the requisite number of investigators based on their player count. Additionally, if the seer role is in the game, the cultists get 1 chance at the end of the game to guess the player with that role. If they are correct, they win even if they were about to lose. Gameplay continues with players exploring rooms, having dangerous encounters, resolving dramatic events, and potentially voting to murder one another. And that's the basics of Among Cultists. Check the rulebook for additional rules on increasing difficulty, additional investigator rules, and Automa for AI investigators. This is Good Time Society. I'm Becca Scott, and be careful next time you're in a hallway alone with me. I'll make you pull out your phone, like this video, and hit that subscribe button. We'll see you next time, cultists.